Finding the right person to understand, all of me, but then all that comes with me as well. That balance between wanting to be available and there for that person while I'm juggling everything else, and feeling okay to put the other part of my businesses down, and the sacrifice and compromise that comes with a partnership and a relationship. And then also there's a part of me that has not really lived life yet. There's so many different places and people I've never had an opportunity to happily meet that I might connect and vibe with, that might be a person that my soul connects to.
The night Michael B. Jordan won his Oscar wasn't just a career-defining moment. It was the moment that quietly shattered Laurie Harvey's world in a way nobody saw coming. Because while the cameras were flashing, the crowd was standing, and Hollywood was celebrating one of its biggest stars reaching the absolute top. Somewhere behind the scenes, the energy was completely different. Reports started circulating that Laurie Harvey wasn't celebrating. She was crying, not just emotional, but breaking down in a way that had her mother Marjorie Harvey up all night trying to console her. And the reason? It wasn't just about seeing Michael B. Jordan win. It was about realizing what that win represented. Hashtag Laurie Harvey, hashtag Michael B. Jordan, hashtag Oscars at Hollywood. Because this wasn't just any ex. This was a man who at one point was fully invested in her. Or a man who didn't play games, didn't move casually, didn't treat the relationship like something temporary. When Michael B. Jordan stepped into that relationship, he stepped in with intention. He brought Laurie Harvey into his real life, not just the public version. He introduced her to his family, something he had rarely done before. He spent holidays with her, moved with her publicly, and made it clear through interviews and actions that he was thinking long-term. And that kind of energy doesn't come around often, especially not at that level. Hashtag relationship goals, hashtag celebrity couples at pop culture. But what makes this story hit even harder is how everything ended. Because from the outside, it looked sudden. One moment, everything seemed aligned. The next, it was over. And the explanation that followed didn't fully match what people had seen. Laurie Harvey said she wanted to focus on herself, live her life, and not rush into something serious. And on the surface, that sounded reasonable. But when you compare that explanation to the level of commitment Michael B. Jordan was showing, it created a gap that people couldn't ignore. Hashtag breakup drama, hashtag celebrity news at Shade Room. And that's where things started getting complicated, because instead of the story ending there, it evolved. Not quietly, but publicly. Suddenly narratives started forming, rumors started spreading, and instead of the breakup being seen as a simple difference in timing, it turned into something else entirely. There were whispers about cheating, about outside involvement, about things happening behind the scenes that weren't being fully explained. And the most powerful part of it all? Those narratives were never fully shut down. They were allowed to exist, to grow, and to shape how people saw Michael B. Jordan after the breakup. Hashtag drama alert, hashtag Hollywood stories at viral news, and through all of that, he stayed silent. No interviews clearing his name, no social media responses, no public defense, just silence. And at the time, that silence worked against him. People filled in the gaps with their own assumptions. The narrative leaned away from him. And for a while, it looked like Laurie Harvey had moved on cleanly while he was left dealing with the aftermath. Hashtag public perception, hashtag media narrative at Entertainment Tonight. But now, everything looks different. Because time didn't just pass, it revealed something. While the noise was happening, while the narratives were being pushed, while the internet was deciding who was right and who was wrong, Michael B. Jordan was working, quietly, strategically, building towards something bigger. And that something turned out to be one of the highest achievements an actor can reach. An Oscar. Hashtag success story, hashtag level up at Academy Awards. And that's where the story flips. Because now, instead of people questioning him, They're reevaluating everything that happened before. They're looking back at the breakup, the rumors, the narratives, and asking whether the full story was ever told. And at the same time, they're looking at Lori Harvey differently too. Not because she did anything new, but because the outcome changed how everything is being seen. #narrative shift, #celebrity analysis at Media Talk. And then came the moment that changed everything emotionally. The alleged phone call. Because according to what's being said, Lori Harvey didn't just watch from a distance, she reached out. She tried to congratulate him, tried to reconnect, even if just briefly. But what makes this moment powerful isn't the attempt, it's the response. Or more specifically, the lack of one. No answer, no callback, no acknowledgement, just silence. And silence like that hits differently when there's history involved, because it doesn't just mean busy, it can mean done, completely. #no response, #closure at celebrity drama. And that's what reportedly led to that night. The night where Marjorie Harvey was consoling her daughter. The night where emotions finally caught up. The night where everything shifted from public narrative to private reality. Because it's one thing to move on publicly, it's another thing to realize that the person you moved on from has completely moved on from you too. Because while the internet was busy focusing on Lori Harvey and Michael B. Jordan, something even more explosive was happening behind the scenes, something that had been building for years inside the Harvey family itself. And according to what's being said, the person who finally let it spill wasn't a stranger. It was someone from inside. Brandy Harvey, #Harvey family, #Brandy Harvey, #family drama at Inside Hollywood. Now this is where everything takes a different turn. Because this isn't just about a breakup anymore. This is about years of tension, favoritism, and resentment that never got addressed, finally finding a moment to come out. And that moment just happened to be when Lori Harvey was at her lowest emotionally. Because from the outside, the Harvey family has always looked polished, perfect, united, the kind of blended family that figured it all out. But according to sources, that image doesn't fully match reality. There's been tension for years, especially between Steve Harvey's biological children and the life he built later with Marjorie Harvey. #blended family, #hidden truth at Celebrity Insider. And at the center of that tension is Lori Harvey. Because she's been seen as the favorite, the one who gets the most attention, the most public praise, the most visible support. And when that kind of dynamic exists in a family, especially a blended one, it doesn't go unnoticed. It builds, quietly at first, then louder over time. My #family issues, #favoritism at Real Talk. And this is where Brandy Harvey comes in. Because from what's being said, she's someone who lived through a completely different version of Steve Harvey. A version that wasn't surrounded by fame, money, and success. A version that struggled. A version that wasn't always present. And when you grow up in that environment, watching things change later, it creates a contrast that's hard to ignore. #childhood trauma, #life differences at deep stories. Because imagine this. Growing up when things were unstable, watching your parent choose career over family, seeing them become successful later, and then watching them give everything you didn't get to someone else. That's not something that just disappears. That stays with you. And according to insiders, that's exactly what's been happening here. Because while Lori Harvey was being celebrated publicly, supported in her relationships, and positioned as the face of the family, Brandy and others were reportedly watching from a distance, not fully included, not fully acknowledged. And over time, that turns into resentment. #real family drama, #emotional truth at Unfiltered. And then came the breaking point. Because when Michael B. Jordan won that Oscar, it didn't just highlight his success. It highlighted everything that came before it, including the relationship that ended, including the man that was let go, and including the way that situation was handled publicly. And for someone like Brandy, who was already carrying years of built-up emotion, that moment might have felt like the perfect time to finally say something. Her hashtag breaking point, hashtag truth comes out at viral moments. Because now the story wasn't just about success. It was about regret. It was about family dynamics. And it was about the difference between how things look and how they actually are. And that's why those reports about Lori Harvey crying hit so differently. Because it wasn't just emotional pain from a breakup, it was layered. Public pressure, private regret, family tension, all hitting at the same time. And when all of that comes together, it doesn't stay contained. It spills. Now this is the part that's really making people stop and think. Because once you actually break down what Michael B. Jordan brought into that relationship, the conversation changes completely. It's no longer just about a breakup. It becomes about value, timing, and whether a once-in-a-lifetime situation was walked away from too early. Hashtag Michael B. Jordan, hashtag Lori Harvey, hashtag fumble at Hollywood Talk. Because let's really look at this clearly. Michael B. Jordan wasn't just another name in the industry. He wasn't just another celebrity relationship. He was already one of the most respected actors of his generation. Disciplined, focused, and intentional with how he moved. And when he stepped into that relationship with Lori Harvey, he didn't move like someone testing the waters. He moved like someone building something real. He didn't hide her. He didn't keep things low-key out of uncertainty. He didn't treat it like something temporary. He went all in. Hashtag Allen, hashtag real love, at celebrity couples. He brought her into his world in a way that showed serious intention. Meeting family, spending holidays together, moving publicly as a couple that wasn't afraid to be seen. And those kinds of moves aren't random, especially from someone who has been as private and selective as Michael B. Jordan has been over the years. That level of openness meant something. And people noticed it. Hashtag serious relationship, hashtag commitment at pop culture news. Even Steve Harvey himself publicly showed respect for him. And that's not something that happens lightly. When a father speaks highly of the man his daughter is with, especially at that level. It says a lot about how that man is showing up behind the scenes. Because respect like that isn't given for appearances. It's earned through actions. And from everything that was seen, Michael B. Jordan was showing up the right way. Hashtag respect, hashtag real man, at family values. But here's where everything shifts. Because despite all of that, it still ended. And the reason given? Timing. Wanting freedom. Wanting to live life. Not wanting to rush into something serious. And again, on the surface, that makes sense. Especially for someone young, successful, and still exploring life. But when you place that reasoning next to what was being offered, that's where the conversation changes. Because not everyone gets a situation like that. Not everyone meets someone who is ready, stable, successful, and intentional, all at the same time. And when that kind of opportunity comes and goes, people naturally start asking questions. Hashtag timing is everything, hashtag missed opportunity at Life Talk. And now, fast forward to today, Michael B. Jordan is at the peak. Oscar winner, global recognition, career at an all-time high. And suddenly, when the same decision that once looked like independence is now being viewed as something else entirely. A fumble. Hashtag level up, hashtag success story at trending now. Because perception changes when outcomes change. At the time, it looked like she chose herself. Now it looks like she walked away from something solid. And that's why the internet won't let it go. Because people aren't just reacting to the past. They're reacting to the contrast between then and now. Hashtag narrative shift, hashtag public opinion at media buzz. And then there's the emotional side of it. Because if those reports are true, and she did try to reach out, and he didn't respond, that adds a whole different layer to everything. Because that's closure, not through words, but through silence. And silence like that doesn't just end conversations. It ends access. And that's something people are really picking up on. hashtag no access, hashtag closed chapter at Real Talk Daily. Because at that point, it's no longer about what could have been. It becomes about what is no longer possible. Now, this is where the situation becomes even more complicated, because it's no longer just about Lori Harvey and Michael B. Jordan. It's about Steve Harvey and the position he's now stuck in. And if you really look at it, he might be the one feeling the most pressure behind the scenes right now. Hashtag Steve Harvey, hashtag family drama, hashtag Hollywood at Viral Talk, because on one side, that's his daughter. And publicly, he has always stood by her, supported her decisions, defended her choices, made it clear that no matter what happens, he's going to be on her side. That's what people expect from a father, especially in the public eye. But on the other side, there's Michael B. Jordan, a man he openly respected, a man he praised, a man he once spoke highly of in interviews, making it clear that he approved of how he treated his daughter. And that kind of respect doesn't just disappear overnight. Hashtag respect, hashtag real talk, at Celebrity Dynamics. And that's why that recent moment, when Steve Harvey was seen greeting Michael B. Jordan at a basketball game, hit so differently. Because it wasn't awkward, it wasn't distant, it wasn't forced, it looked natural. A handshake, a hug, mutual respect. And that one moment said more than any statement ever could. Hashtag real energy, hashtag no drama at sports celeb moments. Because it showed that, at least on his side, nothing was broken. But that didn't sit well with everyone. Because reports started coming out that Lori Harvey wasn't happy about that interaction at all. That she didn't want her father maintaining any kind of connection with her ex. And that right there is where things get complicated. Hashtag tension, hashtag family conflict, at Inside Drama. Because now it's not just about relationships, it's about control, boundaries, and expectations. Because think about it. If you end a relationship, you move on, and then later want to reconnect or feel a certain way about that person, does that mean everyone around you has to cut them off too? That's the question people are asking. Hashtag boundaries, hashtag real questions at Social Debate. And for Steve Harvey, that's not an easy position to navigate, because if he completely cuts off Michael B. Jordan, it looks like he's choosing sides in a way that might not reflect how he truly feels. But if he doesn't, it creates tension at home. And that's the kind of pressure that doesn't show up on camera, but definitely exists behind the scenes. Hashtag family pressure, hashtag hidden truth at behind the scenes. At the same time, the public is watching everything. Every move, every interaction, every detail. And the narrative is shifting again. Because now people aren't just talking about the relationship, they're talking about how it was handled, how the breakup played out, how the narratives were pushed, and how things look now in hindsight. Hashtag public opinion, hashtag narrative shift, at trending now and for a long time. The narrative favoured Lori Harvey. She was seen as independent, as someone choosing herself, as someone not settling. But now, that same narrative is being questioned, because outcomes change perception. And when someone you walked away from reaches the highest level, it naturally makes people revisit the past. Hashtag perspective, hashtag life lessons at viral debates. And that's why the pressure is building, because this isn't just about one moment anymore. It's about everything connected to it. The relationship, the breakup, the aftermath, the family dynamics, all of it. And right in the middle of all that is Steve Harvey, trying to balance being a father while also dealing with a situation that the public won't stop analysing. Hashtag caught in the middle, hashtag family versus reality at Celebrity Watch. And when you step back and look at this entire situation from beginning to end, one thing stands out more than anything else. Michael B. Jordan didn't need to say anything, to say everything. Our hashtag Michael B. Jordan, hashtag silence is power at Hollywood mindset. Because think about how this all played out. He went through a public breakup, watched narratives get pushed about him, saw rumors circulate that could have easily been shut down with one interview. But he didn't react. He didn't defend himself publicly. He didn't go back and forth. He didn't try to control the narrative. He just moved forward. Hashtag stay silent. Hashtag level up at success mentality. And that kind of move doesn't always make sense in the moment. Because when people are talking about you, when your name is trending for the wrong reasons, when your story is being shaped without your input, the natural reaction is to respond. But he didn't. And now, that silence looks different. Because while everything else was happening, he was building, working, positioning himself for something bigger. And that something turned out to be an Oscar. Hashtag Oscar winner, hashtag winning moves at Academy Awards. And that's what makes this whole story hit the way it does. Because in the end, there was no argument, no public confrontation, no dramatic response, just results. And results speak louder than anything else. Hashtag results matter, hashtag no talk, all action at Viral Truth. Meanwhile, on the other side, everything is louder. The reactions, the emotions, the conversations. Because when silence meets noise, silence usually wins in the long run. And that's exactly what people are seeing now. Hashtag energy shift, hashtag real talk at trending. But here's the deeper part that a lot of people are starting to understand. This isn't just about winning or losing in a relationship, it's about timing. Because sometimes, two people can be right, but just not aligned at the same moment in life. And when that happens, decisions get made that only make sense in that moment, but look completely different later. Hashtag timing is everything. Hashtag life lessons at deep thinking. And that's why this situation feels so real to so many people watching it. Because it's not just celebrity drama anymore. It's relatable. People see themselves in it. Decisions they've made. Opportunities they walked away from. Moments they wish they handled differently. And that's why the conversation isn't slowing down. Because it's bigger than just Lori Harvey and Michael B. Jordan now. It's about choices, consequences, and perspective. Hashtag real life, hashtag reflection, at viral conversation. And at the center of all of it, depends on who you ask. So now it's your turn. Do you think Lori Harvey made the right decision at the time? Or does it look different now after everything that's happened? And if you were in that situation, would you have made the same choice? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this is one of those stories where everybody sees it differently. And if you made it this far, hit that like button, share this with someone who's been following this story, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this, because stories like this don't end, they evolve. Hashtag subscribe now, hashtag viral content, hashtag celebrity drama at YouTube growth.